Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. As we continue with Part 10, the Bhagavad-Gita, from the Adepts in the Eastern Esoteric tradition by Manly Palmer Hall. Part 1, the Light of the Vedas. The Bhagavad-Gita. The Bhagavad-Gita, or the Song of the Lord, is contained in chapters 25 to 42 of the Bhishma Parva of the Mahabharata. It is in the form of a dialogue between the hero Arjuna and the god Krishna, who manifested himself upon earth to restore righteousness. The song fits so naturally into the place where it occurs that it is difficult to imagine that it could be a later interpolation. Hindu writers are therefore inclined to assign this dialogue to the 14th or 15th century BC. The Bhagavad-Gita is not only the guide of the learned and thoughtful of India, but is also held with deep veneration by the masses. The Mahabharata is one of the great epics of Indian literature. It's believed that the nucleus of the story was derived from the struggle between two ancient clans. Although not committed to writing until about the beginning of the Christian era, it records events which took place nearly 3,000 years earlier. The Kauravas and the Pandavas were related families whose disputes finally ended in war. The two clans, with their allies, arranged themselves on the plain of the Kurus, near the site of the modern city of Delhi. Arjuna, the famous archer and leader of the Pandavas, looking across the plain, beheld in the ranks of the hostile army many relatives and friends. He also saw courageous and honorable men sincerely convinced that their cause was just. Arjuna was appalled at the prospect of bringing suffering and death to many whom he respected and admired. Arjuna turned to Lord Krishna, who had taken human form, and stood beside him as the driver of his war chariot, and received the blessed instructions. From a native painting. Arjuna kneeling before Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. The symbolism involved is immediately obvious. The plane of Kurukshetra is the objective or illusionary universe. The 5 Pandava princes represent the perceptive powers of the mind. Arjuna, as the embodiment of the Pandava principle, carries the mighty bow, Gandiva. He is the race or culture hero, the truth seeker, the objective self who contemplates the knowable. The armies spread out embody the principle of duality by which the supreme unity is obscured. Each faction sincerely believes in the justice of its cause, but reconciliation is impossible on the plane of objectivity. It is the duty of Arjuna to use the sword of quick detachment that separates the false and true. He is unable, however, to overcome the phenomenal sphere of the not-self with its attachments and antagonisms. The armies cry for battle, for in the world of conflict, minds hasten to die for their opinions. Arjuna stands in his war chariot, and in that decisive moment his soul experiences the darkness of despair. Sri Krishna, the high-haired one, is the over-self. He is the experience of the eternal, sought and found on the threshold of pain and terror. Arjuna was resolved to permit his enemies to kill him rather than to raise his arm against them. Krishna, however, rebuked the prince for his lack of insight and reminded him of the ageless teachings of his race. It is therefore said that the Gita is the milk of the Vedas. In no other writing are the ancient doctrines so directly and specifically applied to a mortal dilemma. Even though Krishna is the Lord of love, he admonishes Arjuna to advance the battle. The prince is to test his own heart, fulfill the deeds which are ordained, and without selfishness or fear serve the greater good. The substance of Krishna's first discussion is the restatement of noumenal truth. The wise, enlightened, grieve neither for the living nor for the dead. Krishna says that there was never a time when he did not exist, nor when Arjuna himself, or the princely men, or the most humble soldiers had not existed. There could never be a time when any, be they gods or mortals, would cease to exist. That which dwells within the body passes through childhood, maturity, and old age in that body and passes to other bodies. It is only the obscured instrument of the senses and emotions that causes pleasure and pain, or the illusion of birth and death. All appearances come and go, and none of them stay. That, the eternal being which fills all the universe and enters into every living creature, is imperishable. It is audacity to believe that the changeless one can be destroyed or injured or its purposes defeated. Only forms and appearances have ends. The incomprehensible dweller which inhabits forms and appearances is eternal. He is indeed without perception who says, I am slain, or I have slain. The soul is never born and never dies, nor can it ever come to the non-existence of itself. Even as a man casts aside worn-out garments and takes others that are new, so the dweller in the body puts off worn-out bodies and goes to others that are new. Still, Arjuna is not satisfied. How can he know the answer to the riddle of right and wrong? As he stands upon the brink of war, how can he experience in his own heart the mystery of the eternal peace? Krishna then reveals the rules of self-examination when uncertainty weakens resolution. What is the motive that impels to action? Is it love for some and hate for others that lead us into the chaos of unreasonable conduct? Do ambition, pride, envy, greed, yes, even the impulse to survive, weaken resolution and make the self the servant of fiery desire? Each man must search his own heart, and by so doing apply to himself the measure of the law. There is only one deed that does not fetter the self. This is sacrifice, the generous giving of all for the common good. This is the true meaning of the sacrificial ceremonies of the Rig Veda. Who gives of what he has bestows only illusion, but who gives all of himself performs the virtuous deed. When the Creator fashioned the universe, he desired that law and order should prevail throughout all the world. He therefore first brought forth the Prajapatis, the lords of progeny, and he revealed through them the religion of works. From the Prajapatis descended the great sages and teachers who taught the will of the Lord. In the esoteric commentaries, the Prajapatis were neither gods nor supernatural beings, but advanced spirits from another planet who possessed the skill required to direct the progress of Earth humanity. The Creator then brought forth another order of saintly beings without desire or passion, inspired with holy wisdom, estranged from the universe and undesirous of progeny. These, declining to create or to become fathers of peoples, remained, as the name of the first of their number implies, ever pure and innocent. The Linga Purana says, being ever as he was born, he is here called a youth, and hence his name is well known as Sanat Kumara. In the Ashiva Purana, the Kumaras, the forever youths, are always described as yogins. The Kurma Purana, after listing them, says, these 5, O Brahmins, were yogins who acquired entire exemption from passion. The period of the Kumaras was pre-Adamic. That is, before the separation of the sexes and before humanity had received the creative or sacred fire as told in the Greek myth of Prometheus. From the Kumaras came the religion of renunciation, or the path of inner holiness, for they were not directly concerned with the unfoldment of the objective world. Thus, the Prajapatis stand behind the building processes of nature, and the Kumaras sustain the redemptive aspects of consciousness. These concepts mingle to form the twofold Vedic religion of works and renunciation that maintain order in the universe. The doctrine which contrasts the path of works and the path of renunciation requires the periodic restatement of the internal as supreme. When in the course of ages men turned from the Vedas and corrupted their faith, the esoteric tradition was obscured. To meet this recurring emergency, the Kumaric power manifested itself through a series of divine incarnations. Such embodiments of powers, substantially beyond the human state and therefore not subject to the laws of physical generation, are called avatars. In the Hindu system, any part of the universal being which becomes impersonated is regarded as an incarnation of that being. The disciple should not assume that the supreme deity took flesh and became mortal. Rather a ray or extension of Narayana, the creating aspect of Vishnu, fashioned by will and yoga, the semblance of a body, and manifested through this vehicle for those unable to experience the divinity by direct effort of consciousness. Certain heroes who are believed to have been chosen as instruments for the revelation of the powers of Vishnu are revered as avatars of the god. The legends surrounding the birth of Krishna take the traditional form which is involved in most of the great Indian epical writings. At the close of the third great age, the Dvapara Yuga, a Rajput clan, the Yadavas, had come upon evil times. The rightful king had been deposed by his son, who was in reality a Rakshasa, demon in human form. This evil ruler brought great trouble and misery to his people and neglected all the worthy pursuits. In this emergency, the earth cried out to the gods asking for purification. At the request of the other divinities, Vishnu resolved to incarnate among the Yaduvamsis, and with him came other wonderful beings, saints, sages, and celestials. The parents of the avatar were Vasudeva and Devaki. At this time, Kans, the wicked king, had a dream or vision, in the midst of which a voice spoke from the invisible world telling him that he would die at the hand of the 8th child of Devaki. When the hour of the birth of Krishna drew near, the king placed a strong guard about the house of Vasudeva, ordering that the child be slain the moment it was born. But Vishnu, to make certain that his incarnation survived, caused all the guards to fall asleep and the locks to open in the gates and doors. Vasudeva then placed the infant Krishna in a basket which he carried on his head and departed from the place. In the meantime, the sages and astrologers rejoiced greatly. The king, hearing the reports, ordered all the children to be slain, but he could not outwit the god. From the Hindu pantheon, by Moore, the infant Krishna being carried to safety by his father. There are many wonderful stories of the miracles performed by the child Krishna. After numerous adventures, he joined the Pandavas and served as Arjuna's charioteer during the Great War. When at last his time came to depart from the world, he wandered alone into a forest. There, seated in the shade of a great tree, he entered into a state of yoga. As he was thus meditating, a hunter, mistaking him for a deer, fired an arrow which wounded the foot of Krishna. When the archer came closer and beheld what he thought to be a mendicant in meditation, he was fearful lest he had injured a saint. Realizing the situation, Krishna rose and comforted him, and in the presence of the hunter, he ascended to heaven surrounded by a radiance that filled the whole sky. In the Gita, the supreme goal of human life is the cessation of samsara, or the transmigratory cycles and the causes of rebirth. Krishna exhorts Arjuna thus, abandoning all dharmas, come to me alone for shelter. Here dharma means action. This is the religion of renunciation. At the same time, Krishna inspired Arjuna to accept also the path of karma yoga. This is attainment by works or by the fulfillment of all responsibilities indicated and prescribed by the Vedas. The disciple is instructed that when the virtuous performs an action, he places his act in Brahman. In other words, he releases himself from all consequences by existing only to fulfill the eternal law. The end of all yogas is moksha, or salvation. The religion of renunciation attains the supreme bliss by direct apperception of the substance of the Kumaras. Krishna urged Arjuna to accept the dual form of reality and to fulfill both aspects of the law. The first requirement of true devotion is obedience. The illusion must be overcome by fulfillment and not by rejection. The spiritual journey is through the illusion to the real. Therefore, Krishna unfolded the principles of Jnana Yoga and Karma Yoga. The end is bliss, the means obedience. Yet Arjuna was not required to obey Krishna, for in the discourse the avatar became merely the embodiment of the Vedas. All instruction was grounded in the sacred tradition. The hero of the Pandavas was inspired to cling to the timeless truths. All that Krishna did was to restate these principles and to inspire the hero to acknowledge them and abide by them and in them. The peculiar integrity and beauty of the Gita is its wonderful summary of all that is necessary to clarify the human uncertainty. The inner experience of being in the world, but not of it, finally satisfied the human doubts of Arjuna. He realized that he was but one of that vast throng which populates the world. Like all the others, he must experience pain and pleasure. From the unknown he came, to the unknown he would return, and with him all the princes and warriors. He was involved in a pattern which he could not break without disturbing the intricate network of laws which hold and bind all creatures. Each human being must live out his destiny, and it is not the right or privilege of any man to go against inevitables. Strife and discord, love and hate, hope and despair, joy and sorrow, all these are included in the heritage of illusion. There is no escape through authority, for one man cannot save another. On the battlefield of Kurukshetra, each combatant must face an experience. Each must learn for himself that which not even the gods may teach. Pressed on by eternal conflict, mortal creatures must come, each in his own way and in his own time, to that moment which no man knoweth. Yet whatever be the price, that moment is full payment. Who shall say where truth shall first be known? Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe and comment, and if you can please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.